a quick overview of what we're going to talk about today, and then I'll let our panelists introduce themselves. So we're talking about technical SEO, and we have this program scheduled for everyone in case people don't have questions. But we would really like this to be largely Q&A focused. So you can use the Q&A functionality, or you can just drop stuff in the chat. We'll be keeping an eye out for that. So what we have planned to talk about, if no questions come up, are basically being realistic about technical SEO, sort of setting the stage for our perspective on why this is important and how to think about it. Core web vitals and site performance, indexing, sitemaps, robots.txt, subfolders, page depth, redirects, double EAT, and 404s. If you have questions about any of these things specifically, definitely drop them in, or if you have questions about other things, feel free to drop them in as well. With that, I'll turn over to our experts, Grady and Katie, to give us a little introduction, a little history of who you are and why you're here.
Okay, well, I'll jump in there. My name is Katie Bird, and I'm an SEO success manager with Demandwell. I have been in SEO for one form or another 16, 17 years, starting with my own websites, kind of self-taught that way, and then working in-house on marketing teams at a few different agencies. So kind of on both sides of that equation. The technical part of SEO, that's my favorite part of it. Any kind of, let's dig in and figure out why it's doing something. When those things come up, those are the things I like the best. So I'm excited to do this today. All right, great.
Excellent. Yes, hello. My name is Grady Neff, and I am the solutions architect for Demandwell. And I used to do kind of SEO success manager types work like Katie did several years ago. But in that process, I kind of helped invent some of the main systems and services that we use today, and that then dovetail into the platform, a lot of which are technical SEO focused. So excited to be here. I've been doing this for a while myself, 10 plus years, worked at a previous agency, kind of spiraled off to do kind of other technical type work, and are back doing SEO. So excited to hear what questions you guys have, if there are any, and yeah, let's get it going.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Chantal, and I'm really just facilitating today because this is not an area of my particular expertise. It looks like we have a great question in the chat from Camille. We're just gonna do a little poll real quick, and then we're gonna answer that question. Just so that we know where everyone is coming from, I'm gonna launch this poll. We'd love to know how long it's been since your last technical audit and update. Oh my God, Camille, don't apologize. I'm so glad that you dropped a question in the chat. All right, so we have a poll live. How long has it been since your last audit and update? We have 1 month as an option, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, never done it. And not sure. If you're like new at the company or something. Wow, we got a lot of 1 monthers and a lot of never done it. They're neck and neck right now. Okay, cool. I'm going to end the poll and I'm going to share the results. All right. Can everyone see? So we're split down the middle of never done it in 1 month. We got some 6 monthers in there, and we got some 2 years in there. Cool. No shame here. Just helpful for us to know where everyone's coming from. This is great. Do you, Grady, Katie, do you guys have any thoughts about this? About these results?
About the results themselves?
Yeah.
It's interesting because we're going to do the best that we can to answer everybody's questions for sure. But I'm sure, as Katie will tell you, a lot of it like kind of operates in the gray zone because everybody's website's going to be different. Everybody's tech stack's going to be different. A lot of this depends on your industry and how much you're publishing. And so
like how often you need to do it, you mean? Like
exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So sometimes some people that have bandwidth, it might be more beneficial to do audits more frequently, but then some of them, it might be more just to like get a gut check to make sure that we have like a baseline, we can get those fixes in place, and we can move on to like other things that are going to be more impactful. So great context for us to understand, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's best to do one or the other.
Yeah.
Katie, would you agree with that or disagree?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I also think, though, more frequently, the more people that have their hands in your website. So if you're the only one who's logging in and doing things, what's been changed, what's been fixed. But most times there's multiple departments, different people changing things. There may be a developer on the back end that's making fixes. In a scenario like that, I would say more often, maybe every 3 months, just to check, make sure nothing's gone wrong.
Yeah, as chaos increases, increase your checkups. Cool. All right. Do either of you want to take a stab at Camille's question in the chat?
GA4 specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm happy to kind of get the ball rolling, Katie,
Sure.
but stop me if you have something you want to chime in on.
Okay.
So speaking from Demandwell's perspective, well, actually, first let's do a little baseline just for everybody. Universal Analytics versus Google Analytics 4. Google has said that they're deprecating Universal Analytics this summer, and then they're going to roll over to GA4. And so they've been kind of giving everyone the deadline to say that this is the switch that we need to make, and everybody kind of needs to get on board with that new update. The reason that they're doing it is varied. They want to then move past like cookie type tracking, and there's a bunch of regulatory implications of it. But Camille, your question is more related to how to translate the historical data from UA to GA4. More context as well. There are some nuances and differences between the two, right, Katie? UA is predominantly powered by sessions, I believe, but then GA4 is predominantly powered by events. Would you say that's right?
Correct.
Yeah. So from Demandwell's perspective, we operate just based on a client by client basis. We've been in the process of then trying to ensure that people are then transitioning over to GA4. So then that way we have the appropriate data available to us. We're also working on updates to the platform itself to then make sure that we not only have the historical data like logged somewhere, but then we can switch moving forward to the new GA4 schema itself. As it relates to the details of the reports themselves, I actually am not intimately familiar with it, Camille, but back in the day, I actually was like the reporting guy for an agency here in Indianapolis. There's actually another person on this call who was working with me at that agency, oddly enough. And again, it's kind of hard to say because for the most part, people can set up different events conversions based on kind of technicalities between them. So to be able to then transition between the two, it's kind of its own complicated process. I guess I'll throw it over to Katie and say, have you had any experience with this with yourself right now, or what's it like in your world?
Sure. What I would say first off is on GA4 is if you haven't set it up, please set it up. Like, go ahead, don't leave it to the last minute because it's not a super easy thing to set up. It's not intuitive. So if you haven't done it, please do it. There's a message at the top of Google Analytics when you're logged in that says, if you don't do it, we're going to do it for you. If you can get it done before that, the chance of having it set up well is much higher. Don't let them do it for you if you can avoid that. Also, Google has, I don't know the name of the company that does this, but Google has a free course on GA4 that I felt was really, it was comprehensive enough that I could understand some of the differences between. As an SEO person, I'm like, Universal Analytics is, why do we have to change it? But I think the information you're going to be able to get from GA4 is maybe more valuable kind of from a marketing point of view. Universal Analytics better for a technical point of view. So I think as far as migrating your data and setting up, it's kind of the task you have is to figure out in that reporting, some of the things are called different. They're referred to differently in GA4 than they are in Universal Analytics. So finding those things that match up, that's going to help you a ton in setting up your reports. they won't be a duplicate of what you have in Universal Analytics, but it will come as close as you can to the same data. Eventually, I think we're going to like it, but for right now, it's still I prefer the old one.
So you think eventually like all the same questions will be able to be answered with reporting? It's just a matter of like getting it set up correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Cool.
and I also think it will improve as, Google will improve it as it goes.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
As it pertains to like trying to blend the data so you can look at it in a single view too, Camille, I don't know if you feel the same way, Katie. But honestly, it might be better to just like delineate between the two and be like, this is the way that it was before, and this is the way that it is now moving forward. If not, you might be just like trying to apply just like a broad scale numerical like evolution of that old data, and then it still won't be like one-to-one the same, and you're always going to be a little bit frustrated with that. And so it might be just be better to say, this is directionally what that UA information was. It is session-based information. This is now different moving forward. Trajectory, like, or just directionally, like here's the conversion rates, bounce rates, percentages that then we want to compare between those two to like keep it right. But maybe just acknowledge that they are apples to oranges. And then this is just kind of the transition we need to make moving forward.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure.
Mm-hmm. Great. We have a couple questions in the Q&A. One is from Aaron. Aaron is struggling to get the small startup they work at to prioritize technical SEO, and visibility is suffering as a result. What two key elements would you recommend prioritizing first when trying to build up from zero to little online visibility without a lot of bandwidth? So it's like, what's going to pack a punch, I think, is basically the question. Mm-hmm. It probably really depends, I would guess, on like, what's the problem?
Yeah, I would say like, so in order to get technical SEO prioritized, you have to know what's happening. Like you have to be able to say, well, our robots file is blocking the crawler, which actually just happened with a new customer I was working with. They wondered why did they putting up content, why isn't it getting any views? Well, they had all the crawlers blocked in the robots file. So they took that off. Instantly, they have the crawlers visiting. So you have to I think, identify some of those issues to be able to present it in order for technical SEO to be prioritized. And
maybe the first thing is like get an audit and see what's wrong.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's kind of trying to find where those issues are first. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would love to know some more about that situation too, because a lot of the times we say that, the biggest indicator that's going to then help you achieve SEO success is just the footprint of the website. Plain and simple, bigger websites are going to win. The more pages you have, the more words that then you're going to have, the more traffic you're going to see, as then you're proving more and more relevance to that. So it's kind of silly to think, but like technical SEO and content kind of go hand in hand. So then the more you can grow, the better off it's going to become. But if you're talking about like the technical components themselves, like to Katie's point, it can vary. There's a lot of different levers that can be pulled. There are some key ones though that we would like to say are like kind of like catastrophic errors, mission critical errors that we definitely need to make sure that like are squared away with the website to then ensure as you're publishing more and more content that then you get the maximum value for it. So a huge one that we run into frequently is JavaScript errors with the websites. New themes these days, they tend to lean on JavaScript. And one, there can be too much of it that's then unused, that's then bogging down load times, which then bots hate. But then two, if it's rendering entirely in JavaScript, then that basically means that it is client-side rendering. It is leaning on the browser itself to then interpret the files and then render the website. Now, what a bot is going to do is what's called server-side rendering. It's going to pull all of the HTML files to then read the content on the page itself. And if you have a critical JavaScript error, it's basically just going to see non-rendered text. It's going to see code, and it's not going to understand what's happening on the website. It's just going to look like a blank page. So definitely want to make sure that that is not happening. We do see it sometimes, and it can require a full development update to ensure that then you do have like server side rendering. There are plugins that you can then purchase too, particularly on WordPress, that kind of just like turnkey flip that on for you to make sure that you have like HTML static output for you. But beyond that, to Katie's point, it could be a myriad of other problems: page speed, loading issues, hosting, SSL, robots.txt. SEO, particularly SEO, is just kind of like a game to make sure that then you check off as many of those critical components as possible to say, yep, the website's healthy, it's running smoothly, people can access it, bots can access it, that text can be rendered and understood.
We also see people coming to us a lot who don't have sitemaps, right? And that can have a pretty big impact.
Yep. So sitemaps, this was actually another thing that we were going to talk about later on in the deck.
Yeah, I can get into that.
But typically sitemaps themselves, people view mission critical as having then an XML sitemap. You can get like plugins that then render this themselves. If you're using like HubSpot or Craft, I know that they'll auto generate those for you as well. That's absolutely necessary to then show bots what's on there and available. We also recommend having an HTML sitemap, which is basically like a front end page that is renderable, that then is a long list of links that then a bot could then also find and then easily access every page on the website. The reason being is that after you submit a sitemap to Google, it's going to then ping the website, crawl through, get an understanding of everything. But then every time it comes back, it's going to do what's called a natural crawl, which means it's going to hit the home page and then it's just going to go. It's going to squirrel its way through the website and find every single link that it can until it reaches its time limit and it's done. So having an HTML sitemap also ensures then that when that natural crawl happens, that there's always a way for that bot to then find that big long list of links and then go as far as it can throughout the website. So having them both together is going to be the best case scenario for indexation, for ranking, for crawlability. Would you say that's fair, Katie?
Yep, absolutely. There's a couple things I'd like to add about. So something I see frequently about the XML sitemap is, so it has the bullet there, submitting it to Google Search Console. So a lot of times that step is missed. So very easy to do though. You just pop it in and into Search Console. But what I also see is if there are site updates, new design, anything like that, there'll be a new sitemap and that will be submitted, but the old sitemap will still be there. And some I saw one that actually had 6 different old sitemaps, and it causes confusion on Google's side of what's primary, where should I be going? It's going to look for pages that are no longer there anymore. So keep that cleaned up. So just your latest and greatest is what's listed there in Search Console. HTML sitemap, everything Grady said about crawling, absolutely. And then one other kind of benefit of having that HTML sitemap is every page you have listed on the HTML sitemap now has at least one internal link pointing to it. So you don't end up with any orphan pages, pages that aren't in the menu, that don't have any internal links. If you're not linking internally to a page, Google's going to think, the analogy is kind of like they crawl through your site, your internal links point to your most important pages. If you're not linking to it, why should they even come crawl it? Why should they even pay attention to it? So that's another big benefit of the HTML sitemap.
Yeah, and the link is placed on text that includes the keyword term that you want that page to rank for also. So that's really helpful as well. I think I might just show everyone like where our sitemap lives. I'm not sure if this is like a familiar topic to everyone, if you feel like old pros and we're just like yammering on, but this was totally news to me when I started at Demandwell. So basically like what Grady was saying, the crawlers will land on your homepage and they'll like find all the links that you have growing out in a network from there. So you have like features pages that are connected to the homepage, and you have like your blog, which is connected to the homepage. But then each blog post is like one step away from, or an additional step away from the homepage. If you come down and you have a sitemap on the homepage, then that makes every single link that you have like just one step away from the homepage. Whereas if it were like not linked to the sitemap, it might not be really connected to the homepage at all. Did I just describe that correctly?
Yeah, and effectively what you're talking about, Chantal, is crawl depth,
Mhm. Thank
which is
you.
which can be viewed in a couple different ways. It can be like by subfolders within like the hierarchical tree structure of the files of the pages that you publish. But for a bot and a crawler, it's then going to say like basically how many like pages and pings does it have to then get to before it lands on the page itself. And Google has talked about that, like it's much better to have a wide and flat website. Is that the word that we talked about, Katie, with that?
I think it was.
Yeah, I think so.
We have this here, separate topic. Yeah.
There we go.
Shallow. Yeah.
Shallow. Because then it's much easier to then find every single page that's possible on the domain as quickly as possible without having to then go to a blog post, to a link, to a resources page, to an asset to then find, aha, there's actually a page right here. This becomes more and more of a problem the bigger the website that you have, because then obviously you can't list every single page in the main nav or like in sitemaps. And so it's really helpful to have that like more wide and flat website in those instances, so the bots can just find and index pages as quickly as possible.
Is a sitemap something that you need to have I guess XML or HTML? Is it something that you need to have a dev resource to do?
So it depends on the CMS. It kind of depends on what you're using. WordPress, for example, a lot of people use Yoast and then it just automatically spits out like an XML sitemap for you. I know on the same token too, there are plugins out there to just like pull all of the pages out of WordPress and then render them onto an HTML page to basically give you an HTML sitemap.
Mm-hmm.
We've had some clients in the past too that like have had to have like some dev help if they were on Webflow or HubSpot specifically to then do that kind of auto publishing to get to the HTML sitemap. But if you have kind of a smaller website, we're talking like hundreds of pages, it's also entirely possible and reasonable just to create a blank page, put a bunch of words on there and just hyperlink them yourself. Bing, bang, boom. You have your own HTML sitemap.
Yeah, like build it into your blog post publishing process.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And there are a few sites, free sites out there that if you type in, generate HTML sitemap, they'll do up to, I think it's 500 pages. So they'll crawl the site, pop the URLs in there, and then you just gives you the HTML code. You can take it and put it into your page. It's not going to have your formatting or anything like that, but it will save you from having to manually put in each link. And then you have it as part of your publishing process, to keep it up to date, but that gets the bulk of it handled.
Awesome. I want to do a poll real quick because I'm curious, like, how people are getting a lot of this stuff done on the call. So I'm going to start this poll. What kind of technical resources do you have for technical SEO? The poll is live. The options are in-house, part-time in-house, agency, freelancer, you're the one doing it, or no resources.
While that's being answered too, we had a question in the chat specifically towards the HTML sitemap question. Jacqueline asked, does that mean recommend linking to blogs from the homepage? Effectively, no. That was probably my own problem there, clarifying that, Jacqueline. But basically what we're saying is it's best to have like an index page that renders in HTML that has all links or as many links as possible to your high priority pages that you want indexed. It's best to then have that as an HTML sitemap page that then would be linked in the footer across the whole website, the homepage included. The reason is back to that natural crawl. When the Googlebot comes, it's going to start on the homepage, find all the links that then are pointing to, and then go to them and expand throughout the website. So if the sitemap is then linked in the footer of that homepage, then the bot will then be able to go to that sitemap and then see every single link to then every single page, blog posts included. This really helps to then ensure that those posts that you're putting up, they then will get indexed. I will say though too that blog posts typically get pinged pretty frequently because the blog role is understood to kind of be frequency based. But other kind of like SEO performance pages, sometimes people have problems getting those indexed. And so an HTML sitemap and internal linking, to Katie's point earlier, that's the best way to go about doing it.
Awesome. So it looks like most people have in-house or part-time in-house. That's like the bulk of the crew here. And then we have some agency folks, some folks doing it themselves, and some people have no resources. This is helpful. I do want to talk about indexation next. I'm not sure like what implications that has for leaning on a technical resource, but this, I think indexing is related to sitemaps and why you need sitemaps. And something that I didn't know until I started working at Demandwell is that like you can publish a page and it might not be indexed for like 3 weeks. So it might not even be like registering that it exists in the World Wide Web, like let alone actually ranking. So there can actually be an incredible lag associated with indexing, and like a lot of your pages might not be indexed and you might not even know. I'd love it if you guys could expand on that and see what pitfalls like what challenges people have had with that and how you would think about solving it.
Sure. So within Google Search Console, and that's the screenshot you have there, excuse me, it goes into depth about what's indexed, what's not. And on that screen, lower down on the page, it actually tells you the different reasons why, you know, this URL has a redirect, this one's a 404, those different things are broken out. And so I like to kind of dig in there and see if there's anything that pops out as, okay, this is an issue. We did have a customer that was publishing SEO focused pages, great pages, putting them all in one subfolder. So it kind of, you know, it'd be like demandwell.com/resources/ and then their SEO page. And none of them were getting indexed. And what we found is someone had, you know, on the back end, there was a block on that folder level that the crawler couldn't get past it. So looking at what you have in Search Console, kind of, if you have those kind of issues, they really do rise to the top here. It you know, shows you pretty quickly, like if you have some kind of site-wide issue like that.
Yep, I will agree with that too. And this is honestly like the bane of our existence, because clearly when you publish content, right, you want it to have value. You're doing it with a purpose. And so then to see it as discovered, not indexed, or crawled, not indexed, is very frustrating. You're like, what the hell is happening? And so I think you mentioned it too, Chantal, but just to reiterate, I mean, like index by itself means that it's included when then in the search results for keywords. Google counts it. And so SEO itself is then constantly comparative. So whether it's quantifiably more relevant for a keyword set than another, that's a whole other thing. But you just need to make sure that then it's obviously indexable and it's ready to then go. So publishing frequently and then unique content is then the best way to go about doing it, making sure those technical pieces, components of the website are then up to code, up to par, I guess, to then make sure that it can be indexed. But then back to that HTML sitemap point, and to Katie's other point too, internal links themselves. If you are sending the right signals to all of these pages, and it's referenced in the right spots in the XML and HTML sitemap, and there are links on a myriad of other pages pointing back to another page, then that has then been proven to then help with indexation. Effectively, a ranking factor is if Google keeps coming back to the same asset, whether by external links or internal links. So if it's constantly pinging like one keyword and then returning to that page, it's like, this is an indicator that I need to be paying attention to this thing. I need to then be including it. So being intentional about when you publish pages and then including those internal links in a specific way can help you get past this blocker.
Awesome. Camille has a really great question about 301 redirects, which I think now is a good time for. And it's also related to internal linking. So this sounds like a nightmare. And I'm so sorry if this is happening to you right now, but say you have to implement a 301 redirect and you've linked to that page from like 50 different pages. Do you have to update the link to be the new one? Or is it okay to just rely on the 301 to get people to the new page? And is
Katie,
there an
what do you
easier
think?
way to do it than the manual way?
Well, let's see if Grady agrees with what I have to say here. I would say if the page that you're linking to, if you want that page to rank well for specific keywords, yeah, you need to go back and fix them. If it's in your menu, yes, it should always be like send it to the final destination, because every time, Google's following that link and then it has to ping there, then it has to go to the next one, following those redirects. Sometimes they just, okay, I'm done. I'm not following. I'm not going to keep going there. So particularly if it's on your own site, clean it up as best you can to point to the final destination. If it's something like I don't know, privacy policy or something, I probably, it's probably going to be just in your footer. So it's one change and it goes to, but it has sprinkled some reason throughout your content. I would say, yeah, that would be low on my list of priorities. But if it's a page that's designed to rank, yeah, clean them up. What do you think, Grady?
Can I ask a clarifying question? And Grady, maybe you can answer it partially.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't know the answer to this. So if it's a softball, I'm not setting you up for success intentionally. It's an accident. So when someone creates a 301 redirect, like let's say it used to be, I guess I won't give an example. I don't think it's that necessary, but you have a link to a page that you want to rank for a specific term, and you use that term, and the link is going to this page, and it's the old URL, which now redirects to the new URL. Does Google even recognize that as a link to the new version of the URL that's redirected? Or is it like, no, you're giving all of the points and all of the value to that old link for that specific term?
So there's a difference too between types of redirects. 301 is permanent to then basically say this is now shifting all of this over and it's not changing. 302 is then temporary. It's this is going to then change in the future. For the most part, people just go straight to then 301 redirects.
I don't think I've ever used a 302.
There is a use case for them, but most people just go straight to 301s. And so then by the existence of 301s, it's saying that one that was there before, it's gone forever. Now we're moving over here. To Katie's point too, 301s, they now transfer 100% of SEO value from the old asset to then the new asset. That didn't used to be the case. It's cool now. But the problem is that dependent on how many you have and the size of it, if you're doing it too frequently, one, you can, and if you have an older website, you could have 301 leading to a 301, leading to a 301 to a 301. And if you do that at scale, now you're going to have a problem, because then you're basically forcing a bot to go through those chains, and then it's going to then think that the website is slower than it actually is. You're going to start to then see performance decreases on a scoring basis from Google. So to Katie's point, best case scenario is you just clean them up. So then that way it would just go to the new link itself. Particularly if you have that happening at scale. A development team would be able to help on that front as well. You can deploy 301 redirects through a myriad of different places, hosting, HT access. If that's the case, then a developer could literally just log in there and do Command F, find and replace what the old one used to be and what the new one should be, and then you're good to go.
Cool. Great answer. We have another question related to the sitemap situation, the HTML sitemap. So, and I asked some clarifying questions. I'm just going to kind of summarize. If you have a landing page that's not, I'll ask it actually as two different questions. If you have a page on your website that's not linked in the HTML sitemap, can that still contribute to SEO? And then an additional point of clarification is, what if it's like a paid ads landing page that is not necessarily optimized for SEO? Do you put that type of thing on the sitemap?
I can answer that,
You
and
want to say that?
Katie,
Okay.
Katie can challenge me if I get this wildly wrong.
Mm.
Basically, the HTML sitemap and internal links, right? It's like the best case scenario to ensure that then you get value from what you're doing. But that doesn't necessarily mean that then everything else can't also just happen to then get found and then give you some of that value on the same token. So for example, like if you have a bunch of subdomains that then are related tangential to the primary domain and pointing then back, and you kind of have some cross traffic going, that can help you out. But best case scenario would then be that all of those pages would then be nested directly on the primary domain. They would be linked through the sitemaps. They would be internal linked as well, because then that's like the closest core of what you're trying to prove of SEO value. You're not necessarily saying it's out in the wind, there's room for error. You're just kind of giving it as much control as possible when delivering that to like Google to get that value you're looking for. Would you agree with that, Katie?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep,
Okay.
absolutely. I think too, in talking, if it's a paid landing page that you've created to be optimized, maybe for the ad spot to come and your quality score, that kind of thing, it doesn't need to be on your HTML sitemap. That's not the purpose of that. Like every page really does have a purpose. So that page doesn't have that purpose. It doesn't need to be on the HTML sitemap. The HTML sitemap, the other thing too is, you don't want to have your thank you pages on there. You don't want to have pages that you want to kind of
ebook
put the
download
pages,
page.
yeah,
Things
put
like
the
that.
pages on that you want to show in search. Your download page, you wouldn't want it to be, I've seen where they've had, directly to their PDF. Well, you don't want that. You want that to be gated, so just be careful what you put there. But when I say, there are some pages that really don't need to be there.
Yeah.
Yep.
This also,
And
I think, like touches on sort of not necessarily technical SEO point, more like just general, what activities make a page actually rank. I think it's worth clarifying. Like if you have an ebook landing page that has like an H1, a little subtext, a form, a graphic of the ebook, maybe like a paragraph overview, like that page is probably not going to rank in the search results because it just doesn't have enough words on it. Like, and if so I don't know what value that would really add to this. I always think about it as kind of like it doesn't, but curious to get your guys' perspective.
Yeah, I think, excuse me, even sometimes those landing pages can compete with a page that you've created for that. So if you have a paid landing page created around, a specific keyword so you want that page to show up in Google Ads, but then you've also created an organic page for that keyword. If you're sending Google to both, then you've split your focus again. You want, organic is this page. This other page is just for paid, and we don't need to keep sending Google to this. When the organic crawlers come, you don't need to send them there.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. We have some questions in the Q&A. If you guys want to take a look, I think we've kind of answered the first one from Jacqueline. Although keep up with technical SEO, I'm not sure if that means like keep up to date with the latest stuff or like regularly audit kind of. But if you guys want to take a look and take a stab.
yeah, another question I see here too is 307 redirects. And I'm actually not very familiar myself. But it's entirely possible there are smarter people than us out there that know what they're doing. And I'm just looking right now because, I've never heard of that myself. and I think it's another type of temporary redirect. It looks like.
Yeah.
Katie, have
Let's
you
give it a look.
come across this?
No, I haven't seen that one before, but when I look here, yeah, it says it's temporary. And I'm not sure what the difference would be between that and a 302.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know.
Wow. Maybe we'll have to do a whole SG Weekly on this someday soon
We'll have to,
when we do a little more research.
but that actually kind of, that goes along with the question of how do you keep up with it?
Mhm,
It's like, so, okay, so here's something we haven't seen before.
mhm.
It's searching on those things, but as the issues come up, just searching. There's just so much resource out there about some of those things. And if I think reading these things and looking, it makes it clear to you, oh, I need help implementing this, or oh, this is an easy one. I can fix this myself.
And it looks like it might be more back end too, dependent on like what you're hosting or what your dev environment is like. Because it's saying there might be some differences based on cache responses and if they render pages by get or post. And so I wonder if that has to do specifically with like headless environments versus something that might just be like a CMS that then renders those files. I don't know. That's very interesting though.
We have a question about suspicious backlinks in the Q&A. At what point do you recommend reaching out to a site owner for a suspicious backlink? From Camille. What does that really mean? Like, I guess for the audience and for me.
Yeah.
What's a suspicious backlink?
So backlinks in general, here's some background information. Backlinks are a pretty key indicator for proving relevance in the eyes of Google. Back to that point that if Google bots keep flowing back to the same page or asset, then they're going to then say this is relevant for the topic and keyword at hand. That can then happen both internally, which is why it's very important you have a good internal linking strategy, but then externally. The problem is that historically people would then build backlinks to then influence SEO. And then Google had to do a bunch of algorithmic updates to basically try to combat that because people were trying to artificially dial it up to then make sure that they would float to the top of the SERP to then get as many clicks as possible. So it's very hard to then get a backlink. And it's great if you can, but people that then do build them can put them in some shady places. You can put them in forums, people find them in blog comments as well, and they're still trying to then influence that algorithm as much as possible. There are tools out there that you can use like SEMrush, Moz has it too, Ahrefs that basically do backlink audits. They basically focus almost entirely on backlinks because again, that's kind of like the old school way that SEO was thought of way back when. But if you do have, it's possible that you do have what's called like a very toxic backlink. It could be something from like a very shady foreign website. It could have been built maliciously to then try to then do damage to your domain and website. And it's possible that then you want to then take it down. The easiest thing to do is honestly do a disavowal of the link itself. And for those people that aren't familiar, there is a system through which that you can then upload links and then disavow them, basically say, don't count these. We don't want these to assign and point value back to our domain. In general, you want to be very cautious when doing this, though, because basically the moment that you begin disavowing links, Google's going to say, aha, they're up to date on this. Now they need to then basically keep tabs on it. And so once you start down that path, you actually kind of need a consistent basis to then kind of look at your backlinks, continue to disavow the bad ones to keep that kind of profile clean. If you don't want to do that, or if you don't have a ton of toxic backlinks, you can also do what's talking about what was in the comment here, which is basically reaching out to the site owner and be like, I don't want this. I would like for you to take it down. Sometimes people do both. It just kind of depends on the situation itself. particularly if it is one of those shadier places, the likelihood that you're going to get to talk to anybody is very slim. If it's like a blog that's then like on somebody that was like referencing like an older like version of the platform that you're working with though, or maybe they're referencing an older version of the brand and you're like, we want to change this to something new, that seems more likely and viable to then reach out to somebody. That's like an actual interpersonal relationship that you can connect with. But if it is kind of like that shadier thing that we talked about before, it's probably best just to go straight to disavowal and just like be like, nope, I don't want any of these to be counting towards me. Katie, have you done disavowals in a while?
It's been a while, and actually, because I mean, it used to be like, say, like back in 2007, we could go out and I could build, 2,000 links saying, protein powder pointed at a certain site, and that site would rank, like boom, that would just work. It doesn't work like that anymore, and I think that Google has a much better ability to filter out those junk spammy links than it ever did before. So yes, you have the disavow. It's a good tool to use, but I would say, like, how many toxic links do you have? Or you have, like, did you get listed on a forum that would be, say, like a black hat type thing, and they're pointing thousands of links at you? Well, yeah, I'd go ahead and fix that. If you have a few, they're just showing up here and there, I think that's just going to get filtered out. The other thing too, the biggest thing about doing a disavow is if you've had a manual action, and you can see that in Search Console. So if Google has decided, yeah, you've got too much coming at you, we're not going to rank you anymore, then you absolutely have to do a disavow to, filter through those, get them out.
That's super interesting and super helpful. This is a related question. Is it bad to give a website with a lower domain rating? So like not a shady site, just like not quite as authoritative as your own site. Is it bad to give them a backlink from your site to theirs?
My personal belief would honestly be, Danny, to just like align with your users. Don't necessarily think with like, this is passing like link juice or like SEO value, but think like if this is on a blog pointing to then another website that's actually an asset. And if somebody were reading this and I would want them to go there to actually get help, then that's the best case scenario. You want to then transfer them somewhere else where then they can like actually get the assistance that they need. If you're worried about it too, it's also entirely possible you could slap what's called a no follow tag on that link, which basically would transfer actual traffic if it is a user to the site itself. But then a bot would read that, they would not then be able to then follow that link off of your domain. And so then it would be a way to kind of keep that link juice transfer more contained.
Wow, that's amazing. So you can basically say like, find the information here, but I'm not giving you any of my special sauce, special authority sauce.
Effectively, yes.
Yeah. Cool.
My special juice, Chantal. It's the juice.
Well, I wanted
SEO
to.
juice.
Yeah, exactly. We have some more fantastic questions. One is about if you are a company that has an app that's listed in the App Store and your website, a lot of the calls to action are sending people to the App Store. Anything to be aware of there? It's an interesting question because you're sending people away from your site constantly, basically to the App Store, which is super interesting.
From an SEO perspective, I don't know if there necessarily would be a problem. I see you kind of perking up over there, Katie. Were you going to jump in?
It's kind of like what is the scenario? It's like how does. But I don't think so, because yes, you are sending them somewhere, but it's where they can fulfill what it is that's what the button is, like, get our app here, and the app is here. So I don't see where that would have any kind of a negative effect. You're fulfilling the request. That's a good user experience. It's kind of like, where else would you send them if unless you hosted the app on your own site also, like you had it in the store, but you also posted it on your site. But I would probably keep it just the way it is.
This is a backlink question again. Is the reputation of the site that has your backlink, does that matter more than the amount of backlinks you have? For example, if Harvard Business Review linked back to your site instead of 10 with lesser authority.
Yes.
Yes,
it would.
that's the answer. Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure there's like a point of optimization somewhere, and like maybe it is literally a math equation based on authority, but what are the components to think about, I guess?
Yeah, so effectively, I'm sure it's known and understood, like all domains and all websites have like page rank and then page authority. So then the higher that authority, then the more link juice, back to that other question, they then have. So then if there is a backlink from a high page rank domain authority like URL back to your website, it's passing a lot more value than like 100 links at a very low page rank, page authority type URL. So that would be the creme de la creme, getting Harvard Business Review or something like that to actually link back using
New York Times.
dedicated keyword that you're trying to go after. Something we haven't covered as well when it comes to backlinks is that the keyword itself carries value with the link too. So click here isn't necessarily going to transfer a lot of value back to your domain. But if the link, the hypertext, if the hypertext of the link is then a keyword that then you want to rank for us, it'd be SEO software. If we had SEO software as a follow link from Harvard Business Review pointing over to Demandwell, then that would be white hot. That would be amazing for us. So definitely worth your time to then work those connections, particularly if you do have them with like kind of partner websites. Sharing that type of value and asset is hugely important for SEO.
Have
Yeah,
either of you been able to wrangle that type of high caliber backlink for a company that you've worked with before?
I'd say your best avenue, like Grady was saying, if you have any relationships, those
Mhm.
are probably the easiest ones to get. But outside of that, it becomes more of like a PR type approach. So, there are reporters from the New York Times looking all the time, looking for comments and this and that. You want to be in that place to answer those. And there are some sites online that you can sign up and you get those queries that you can then answer. And that's probably, I would say, the best way to get those reputable, high domain authority links. And just to kind of add on to what Grady was saying, it used to be a game of quantity over quality, but now it's very much quality over quantity. So very much.
So
And
good
with that too, I know we're coming up on time. In general, like Katie just said, backlinks used to be it for SEO. And it is very touchy now these days based on Google's algorithm updates that then they've made. It's very easy to then understand if you're trying to then influence that. And you can actually get a manual penalty against your domain if you're found to do that. That means that your entire website can be de-indexed. If you want a really fun, harrowing read, look up Expedia back in the day. They basically had their whole website taken down. It like tanked their business for the years. Crazy. They were building backlinks found to then be influencing that. So holistically as an organization, right, we view backlinks more as like SEO 3.0. We want to then ensure that the website is technically sound first, that it's doing all the right things functionally. So in that way, we can begin to then produce content that then is going to be sending the right white hat signals to Google to prove that then you are relevant for the keywords that then you actually want to then rank for. Getting into a really good rhythm of then doing that is the best way to then systematically grow your SEO efforts, get more qualified traffic onto the website. Once then we have those complete and we're getting into that good rhythm, that's where we want to begin talking about backlinks. Let's figure out that PR strategy. Let's figure out if there is like anything that we need to be cleaning up to then supplement what is already happening as well on the technical and content side of things. So can't stress that enough. Please don't think that SEO is just backlinks. If anything, it should be kind of one of the final things you start thinking about. Definitely focus on technical SEO as well as getting the right words on the page to assign that value and relevance to what you guys are doing.
Yeah, it's like icing on top of the cake of a lot of hard work, basically.
Mhm.
Cool. Well, we're really close to time and we do have some additional questions that we are not going to have time for. So thank you all for joining in. And Camille, I totally feel you. We have the same exact problem where we get dinged for mobile usability, even though most of our traffic is from desktop. It's the most annoying thing ever. But I think I want to leave everyone with this, which is that we were originally going to start with this, which is like technical SEO is one of those things where like you can never get it perfect. And so you have to be realistic and you have to like accept certain things are not always going to be good. And you kind of just like do the best you can, fix the really critical errors, and like some things you may just accept as they are. Any final thoughts on this? Katie?
Yeah, I would say there is definitely, you have to keep things in perspective and put them in, this is gonna move the needle, this is not, or this might, this definitely will. Keep those things in priority because we only have so much time, right? So do those mission critical items, and the rest you can pick away at as you have time. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Katie. Thank you, Grady. Thank you, everyone who asked questions today. This was a super fun, very engaging one. I think this is the most chat action we've had in all of our SG weeklies. So thanks so much, everyone. Take care.
Fun. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.